Good evening, everyone. One new face. So let's all say our first name. Naoko, can you tell us your first name, please?
My name is Naoko. I go to St. John's, actually. I take a couple of classes at MLC.
I'm Brad.
No, Dave, why don't we start up here and we'll...
Yeah, I'm David. I'm Ron. Calvin. Brett.
I'm Hannah. Jody.
And I'm Pastor Smith, so my first name is Pastor. So, good to see all of you. This morning we didn't have an empty chair.
Wow.
So we packed in 28 people actually, counting me in this room this morning, so it was a big group. So 35 is usually the limit for what I can teach in a single day, and we've broken that here this evening, so good to see all of you. We also didn't make it out of chapter 28. We're in Exodus, and so we're going to talk about the blisteringly interesting topic of clerical clothing today and the priest's garment. And you have a little picture there on your handout of my brother. Well, he looks like my brother a little bit, and in the outfit, so we're going to talk about this. So the Lord is talking to Moses. The Lord, by the way, and Moses are up on Mount Sinai. The people are down below, if we remember this. And pretty soon, in fact, next Tuesday, they're going to get antsy and build the golden calf. So that's kind of where we are in the story here, but we're not quite there yet, but we're pretty close. And so the Lord says to Moses, "Have Aaron, your brother, brought to you from among the Israelites, along with his sons, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, so they may serve me as priests. Make sacred garments for your brother Aaron, to give him dignity and honor." So the purpose for the special robe of the priest?
Dignity and honor.
To give him dignity and honor. That's right. Don't just wear whatever you woke up in this morning, but let's have this garment. And because all the priests wear this, it also gives them a sense of uniformity. And there is an advantage to uniform. We'll talk about that at the end of the hour tonight when I talk about what our pastors wear and why, and so forth. Yes?
The grammatic writing is unusual for how I would say this, but it looks like he's got 4 sons. Are just the first 2 his sons, or?
No, 4 sons, Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar and Ithamar, 2 pairs.
Too many hands in the sense.
Nadab and Abihu are going to be killed by God soon for sinning, on the day of their ordination, actually. And so they're 2 separate pairs. The pair the Israelites will know for the rest of time are Eleazar and Ithamar. They're the pair who became the 2 leading priests, and then Eleazar takes over when Aaron dies. So 2 pairs. So there's a translating question there. I mean, in Hebrew, there's an "and" before everything. In Hebrew, the first word of this sentence is "and." In Hebrew, the first sentence of Exodus is "and." So it's called a vav consecutive, and it happens all over the place. And there's a question of the translator: how many of these do I put in? How many don't? And some of that is according to usage, in the receptor language, as we say as translators. So, "Tell all the skilled men to whom I have given wisdom in such matters, that they are to make garments for Aaron for his consecration, so he may serve me as priest. These are the garments they are to make: a breastpiece," and I have this list on your sheet, "a breastpiece, an ephod, a robe, a woven tunic, a turban, and a sash. They are to make these sacred garments for your brother Aaron and his sons, so they may serve me as priests." So if we take a look at this guy, this individual is a typical priest, or you may think a chef in France, depending on what you think of his hat, right? But I'm glad that they did the turban this way, because it's not not all turbans are exactly the way that you see Arabs wearing turbans and so forth. It's just a kind of a wraparound headpiece. And it might be floppy or it might not be. It's just that rather than the modern concept of a hat, they wrapped cloth around, and that's just how they made something up there. Which really, more literally, is one size fits all, isn't it? For your headgear. But this guy does not have a breastpiece or an ephod. A breastpiece is really it's a piece of cloth that's 9 inches this way and 9 inches this way. And then it had this gold piece on it with a bunch of stones held in. That's the breastpiece. We'll talk about that later. And the ephod is the second thing I ever made in home ec back in middle school. So we had, in my home ec class, and we had all kinds of elective classes when I was in school, in my school. Of course we took band and choir, but I took 6 years of drafting and 6 years of woodworking in school, between middle school and high school. And you could take, shop and everything, and metalworking or small engines, and I also took home ec 1 year. And the first thing we made on the sewing machine was a pot holder, and you had to use that for the rest of the semester. So if you got it wrong, you're going to burn your hand every time you make cookies or whatever. And really, I took the class because of what two things? Cookies and girls. Yeah.
Not necessarily in that.
Yeah. Well, 7th grade, But the second thing was what the text says is an ephod, which we called an apron. So it's an extra piece that goes around the neck and protects the chest, and is there because when you have this bouncy thing, this ephod on the outside of it, it's going to damage your nice robe. So there's an extra piece of cloth there, and it makes sense. And it's just an extra thing that holds that on. So this guy is wearing a robe. Under his robe, which isn't in the picture, he's wearing a woven tunic, which we might call or shirt, or even something, or undershirt. Yeah. And a turban, that's that thing, and a sash, which is like a little bit of a belt. Let's go back to the idea of the woven tunic, though. So on our pastors, as they're leading worship up front, our pastors at St. Paul's, at least, wear what color robe usually? White robe. What do they wear under it? Do you want to know?
Sure.
They do wear something. Do you think that we all wear a dress shirt and a tie?
Yes.
You think I wear a tie under that gown and then a stole?
A lot of them used to, yeah.
Especially in July and August, it gets way too hot up there. For one thing, the lights that are shining on us there's 8 and there's 6 and 6 and there's 2 and 2 plus another 4 above. That many, and those are theater lights. Those are Fresnel theater lights that beam down on us in our sanctuary. Theater lights. They're incredibly hot. The air conditioning starts below our feet in the steps and blows toward the congregation. We have no air conditioning up front. It gets incredibly hot up there. And I'm usually sweating by the middle of the first service of the 3 services on Sunday morning. So no, I do not wear a dress shirt. And usually I'm wearing actually this very t-shirt. Or one like it, maybe one little bit lighter. But typically, I try not to wear my AC/DC t-shirt or anything that would show through some of you are too young to know what that even is. Hannah, do you know what AC/DC is? Okay, all right. Actually, in my case, it would have been Earth, Wind, and Fire, but you get the idea. So we don't, but a solid color shirt underneath. It is, now, if I have a funeral, or a wedding, or it's Lent, when I've got the black gown on, then I'm going to wear a dress shirt and a tie, because they show, or I'm going to have to take the robe off quickly, move from place to place. But on a typical Sunday morning, forgive me if that blows your impression of me, but, welcome to the 21st century. So turban and sash. Next, we go to Dad. So Aaron, who, by the way, in this text, Aaron is 84? Approximately. Moses is 80, Aaron is about 84. So he has extra stuff. He has an additional blue semi-robe, and then over his priest's white robe, he has the purple ephod that comes down and the breastpiece with all the stones on it. And then at the bottom, he has a hem we're going to read about. Every other thing is a bell, an actual little ding-a-ling-a-ling bell that rings, and every other one is a little woven pomegranate, a little red just knob hanging down. So one is the pomegranate, a symbol of gospel, God's blessings and so forth. The bell, we're going to find out, is a symbol of the law. It's a warning as the high priest is entering into the Holy of Holies that he's going in so he's not killed. That's what God says in this chapter. So there's law and gospel there, a little bit of warning. Okay. Any questions about the outfit? Which, by the way, we're not done reading about it. There's plenty of text. There's 40 more verses of text.
No shoes?
So, just whatever sandals you have. Yeah. They took off their sandals in certain cases. Take the shoes from your feet. This is holy ground and so forth. But they could wear sandals when they were making the sacrifices and stuff like that. Have them used gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen. Make the ephod of gold and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and of finely twisted linen, the work of a skilled craftsman. And what do we mean by finely twisted linen, really? Yeah, thread or string. Yeah, you've got the linen, but then you've got twisted linen, which is how you make. When you think about it, one of the great unsung inventions of mankind is string. It's right up there with things like the wheel and fire, and VCRs. String is a really, really important thing. Without it, you don't get rope unless you start with string and so forth. It's a pretty big deal. So, it is to have 2 shoulder pieces attached to 2 of its corners so it can be fastened. And, what gets fastened down there? We'll talk about that. Its skillfully woven waistband is to be like it, of 1 piece with the ephod, and made with gold and with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and with finely twisted linen. And take 2 onyx stones, and engrave on them the names of the sons of Israel. I'm going to stop there. Onyx can be black, it can be dark gray, it can be dark, maybe even dark green, but this looks purple to me in the picture. Doesn't it look that way to you? The Hebrew here is incorrect. It's the wrong alphabet. In Moses' time, they used a form of Hebrew that we call Phoenician. So it would have looked different, somewhat different. Some of the letters would look very similar. But like on the upper left, you see on the top word, there's something that looks like the English letter Y up there. That would have been a little circle, okay, in Phoenician. Things look different in Phoenician. But that's okay. This is just some artist's rendition. But engrave them. And he says, engrave them in the order of their birth. So there are very few times where anybody in the Bible worries about the actual birth order of the 12 sons of Jacob. Do you remember another time where they thought about that? It's in Genesis when Joseph has his 11 brothers, and he seats them in the order of their birth. And they're stunned. Because how would this Egyptian know which of us is... Because in some cases, there might have been 4 of them born in the same month. 4 moms. So how do you know, who was born on the 14th and who was born on the 18th? And Joseph gets them all right. And that stunned the brothers. And then here. Also a curious thing here is that if you were to list the 12 names in order, would you start at the top of one stone and go down? And then start at the top of the other stone and go down? That's probably what I would do. That's not what this artist did. So they read, on the left is Simeon at the top, and then Reuben on the right, and then below Reuben is Levi, and then Judah. So Reuben, Simeon, Levi. No, it's right, left, and then right, left. So Reuben, Simeon, Judah, Levi. That's correct. And then Issachar, Zebulun, Naphtali, Dan, Gad, Asher, Joseph, Benjamin. But reading across instead of down. So it's another way of interpreting this, I suppose. But he wore them on his shoulders. I'm just going to pause there because I also forgot to start with my trivia question, which I should have done. So I'll just pause now to do it. It affects the text. Who are the 4 most famous carpenters in the Bible?
Noah.
I heard Joseph, Jesus himself, Noah, who built the ark. Not a carpenter. You mean to tell me the guy who built the Ark of the Covenant is not a famous carpenter? Shouldn't he be? And that's a curiosity to me. But so the 2 guys who built all of this stuff and the tabernacle and the Ark their names are Bezalel and Oholiab. So, like the Christmas hymn? O Oholiab, the night is brightly shine. Never mind. Okay. I was looking for a much bigger laugh. It got no laugh at all this morning. They didn't even know what I was doing. So okay. No, I'm officially on the clock now. Yeah. Today I'm being paid. Yeah. I just did 3 Bible classes without getting paid apparently, and now I'm back on the clock again. Engrave the names of the sons of Israel in 2 stones, the way a gem cutter engraves a seal. Then he wears them on his shoulders. Mount the stones in gold filigree settings. You guys have any idea what does that suggest to you?
Fine strands.
Yeah, it's kind of detailed gold work. The most delicate gold chain or gold strands of something that something that a girl under the age of 7 would be given for a necklace. Really delicate, something very, very light, very delicate. That's kind of filigree, whatever it might happen to be. Gold lace, something like that. So mount the stones in gold filigree settings and fasten them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel. Aaron is to bear the names on his shoulders as a memorial before the Lord. So as Aaron goes in, like, for example, to make a sacrifice, he has the names of all the tribes of Israel on his shoulders. So that they're sitting, like the sins of Israel are going to be actually both, we're going to be told, on his forehead and on his shoulders as he goes in to do this. Make gold filigree settings and 2 braided chains of pure gold like a rope, and attach the chains to the settings. So these things are held on. It reminds me a lot of when an officer in the Navy reaches command or flag rank. He begins to get braid on things like on his cap and so forth. If I had taken the commission I was offered a couple years ago, I would have had 2 braid things on my ship cap. But I wanted to stay your pastor, so I didn't take the commission. 15. Fashion a breastpiece for making decisions. Now he's going to talk about that a couple times. That's the reason for the breastpiece with the stones, for making decisions. The work of a skilled craftsman. Make it like the ephod of gold and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and of finely twisted linen. It is to be square, a span long and a span wide, and folded double. Why folded double? Well, it's going to have rocks on it, so you want it to last and so forth. You don't want it to I mean, what happens when you've got a shirt with any kind of a decoration sewn onto it after a while? Starts to pull away and tear and whatever. So let's give it some backing, make it firm. Also, it would sag with the weight of the stones, wouldn't it sag? And so forth, so you've got to be careful of that. I mean, put 12 rocks on your chest. You know, how firm should that thing be? I would hope it would be maybe the consistency of burlap or something like that, or a little bit tougher even. This is our artist's rendition. I just found this online. That the names, I want to emphasize that in this list of the stones, the names of the stones are in some cases pretty well documented, like ruby, but beryl, not so much. Like it only occurs in the context of this list of stones. So what is the stone really? You know, things like emerald, the sapphire, the agate, onyx, and jasper, those are pretty common in the Bible. They get mentioned a lot, but the other ones, jacinth and amethyst and so forth, usually just in this. So I don't know if the colors will all necessarily match up, but I'll read them. Mount 4 rows of precious stones on it. In the first row, there shall be ruby, topaz, and beryl. What color? Anybody know what color a beryl would be?
I think there's multiple choices.
So it could be anything. But that upper right stone, does that look ruby red to you? I think of, like, forgive me, Kevin's hat as being ruby colored, right? You know, like a dark, intense red or something like that. But I don't know. In the second row, turquoise, a sapphire, and an emerald. So in the second row, if turquoise is the far right-hand one, does the far left-hand one look emerald to you? I mean, I think of, you know, emerald as being like in The Wizard of Oz and the Emerald City, or my coffee can here of whatever emerald would look like. But anyway, in the third row, a jacinth, an agate, and an amethyst. Anybody else play with marbles as a kid? Did you have an Aggie? Yeah. And then the fourth row, chrysolite, onyx, and then jasper. And jaspers and onyx can be different colors too. Jasper often has like a line through it or something like that. So what we do know is that these are all precious stones. They were mounted. This has them all looking like they were cut in rectangles. I don't know if they cut them into rectangles. I don't know if they were squares or if they were round, or maybe they were trapezoids or dodecahedrons, or maybe it was just the way they got them, but they mounted them in some way with settings. So typically a precious stone is fairly light. They would want to cut it so it's light enough, and so you can bend some kind of fitting. What would they be using for the metal? He says it. Gold is the easiest one to do. Yeah, it's certainly the most malleable and bendable and so forth. And if you have enough pieces of gold bent over, then most of them will hold for a long time. You may have to replace them after a while. But, yeah.
I don't want to distract us, but kind of a general theological question. Why all the details? Is it just God's discretion? Is it foreshadow the New Testament? Does he see if we will be able to do it?
With these stones in particular, or just in general?
The whole chapter.
Well, what we're going to see is God gives his people these guidelines, and he doesn't want them to exceed the guidelines. And he doesn't want them to do what other nations did. So I don't want you looking like you're a bunch of Moabites or Amorites or something like that, or Philistines. We're going to be set apart with this in some way. So whatever the Philistines may have used for their priests, that's not what the Hebrews are going to use. And so on and on like that. That's the about as far as I'm willing to go. Not all of these things have a New Testament application. But that every tribe is represented, that's, just representative. And why did he use gold? It's very precious. It's, the most valuable metal in most cultures, or at least it was in ancient times. It's still pretty valuable today, and so forth. And some of it is just simply practical. He's going to say when you make the hole for the guy's head to go through on the robe, make sure that there's extra stitching, so it doesn't tear. That's just practical, seamstress work, things like that. So, mount them in gold filigree settings, again, the mounting of the stones to get them to hold in place. There are to be 12 stones, one for each of the names of the sons of Israel, each engraved like a seal with the name of one of the 12 tribes. So this is incomplete. They would have had the tribal names written on them, carved out. Like our tombstones, but much, much smaller and unprecious stones. For the breastpiece, make braided chains of pure gold like a rope. Make 2 gold rings for it and fasten them to 2 corners of the breastpiece. Fasten the 2 gold chains to the rings at the corners of the breastpiece, and the other ends of the chains to the 2 settings, attaching them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. Now, if you were going to be the guy who had to make this, I know I'd be drawing. Well, Moses is saying this. That's how I think. So it was clear to them. We have gold chains in some of our worship apparel. Do you know where? What our pastors wear? In the scarf that a pastor wears, it's called a stole. In some of them, we have a gold chain going from one side to the other. Those are held, and it's described a little bit like this. There has to be a gold ring sewn into the seam of the inside of the actual stole. There's a gold ring. I think ours are actually, I think they are gold because they're pretty bendable. They could be brass. But they're sewn in so that then the chain attaches to one and attaches to the other. But when they break, typically our seamstress, whoever he or she will be, will just sew it on to the stole itself. When we got the set of stoles that we just replaced, so this is 15 years ago, the red ones that we wear just for like Pentecost and ordinations and things like that, Confirmation Sunday and so forth, they had gold chains. And as the 3 of us, Pastor Sutton and I and Pastor Henning, put them on, all 3 of us had the right side of the gold chain snapped right there in the sacristy. We were about to walk out to church, and all 3 of them snap, 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 like it was just poorly made or a bad design or something. And I'll never forget, Pastor Sutton said, we should all match. Break, break, break. We all of them, because we had to go. So, and those chains, actually, see, I'm holding them up for you. They're all in the same drawer, exactly where Don set them 15 years ago. They've never left that drawer. They're all still there. Like, there's gold chain there. I remember that day. It's Confirmation Sunday, about 2004, is about when that happened, and that's 20 years ago, isn't it? Sorry, my math is. I'm older than I think I am. So they did this, and they've got things. They want these things, the breastpiece and so forth, to stay on and not to tear off. So we're going to make rings that will hold it and attach to it. That's how this is going to go. Make 2 gold rings and attach them to the other 2 corners of the breastpiece on the inside edge next to the ephod. Make 2 more gold rings and attach them to the bottom of the shoulder pieces on the front of the ephod, close to the seam, just above the waistband of the ephod. Very specific, isn't it? But if you're taking notes to try to build it, you'd say, oh yeah, those are next to each other. One's at the bottom of the breastpiece, and one is on the ephod right at the breastpiece and so forth. So that's where it goes. The rings of the breastpiece are to be tied to the rings of the ephod with blue cord, connecting it to the waistband so that the breastpiece will not swing out from the ephod. So when he's bending over like sacrifice or something, it doesn't like swing over or something, like it stays put. Like I remember when my dad came home from the army. My father served in the army when I was a little boy. He was in the reserves for a while. After he had done his time, he was still in the reserves. And as he was getting promoted through the striped ranks, he finally mustered out. I was about 4 years old, and Dad took off one of his staff sergeant insignia from off the arm of one of his shirts to show me, what it looks like. And underneath, you could see all of the stitching from the previous insignias he wore. So he was a one-rocker sergeant, but there below it was the stitching for a no-rocker sergeant and a corporal and a private. Dad had done all the sewing himself. And my mom took him to task, oh, your stitches are too far apart and all of this. Like Karen, it's just, but do you know, I don't know if any of you were ever either in the military or in Lutheran Pioneers. Do you know what most rank insignia are backed with now to help in the sewing process when they get sewn on? There's almost always are hand sewn by the soldier himself. But it's glue. There's a backing that's slightly glued, and often we use white glue to sew it on, and then wash it, and the glue washes out, and then but the patch is then firmly in place where it's supposed to go to help the guy sew it properly. Because who would trust a private in the army with sewing his stripe on correctly, so it won't swing out. Whenever Aaron enters the holy place, he will bear the names of the sons of Israel over his heart on the breastpiece of decision as a continuing memorial before the Lord. So in some way, this thing was used to make decisions. How was that done? I don't know. But the Lord told Moses, and Moses told Aaron, and Aaron told high priests until down to the time of Joshua. They all knew. But do I know? No, I don't know. One of our members this morning thought that he knew, but I don't know. So it's a little bit different. One of our new guys. Also put the Urim and the Thummim in the breastpiece. Do you know what those things were? The Urim and the Thummim were stones. They were yes-no rocks in some way. They were kept behind this thing in little pockets behind the breastpiece. And were they light on one side, dark on the other? Was one all dark and one all light? One had the word Thummim written on it, and one had the word Urim written on it. But what did they do? How were they used? Were they thrown like dice? Were they just done more like guess how many fingers I'm holding behind my back, that kind of a thing, bring them out like that. I don't know what they would do. Did the breastpiece attract the Urim almost like a magnet, but in some spiritual way? Or did it repel like the other end of a magnet? Or did they glow? Because it seems like the breastpiece was used in association with this in some way. So I don't know, but they knew. Is that enough? It's really not satisfying, though, is it? It's about as satisfying as, for me, watching a game of cricket. I have no idea what the rules are, right? I think I have an idea because I know baseball, but I do not know cricket. And so I don't know how it works. I don't know why this guy is running. Why is the same guy running and scoring like 25 runs? I don't know what that is, and so forth. I don't know what it means to be in a duck. I don't know any of this stuff, so I don't get it. And maybe you do, but you're smarter than I am. But I don't know cricket, and I don't know the Urim and Thummim. So they can be over Aaron's heart whenever he enters the presence of the Lord. Thus Aaron will always bear the means of making decisions for the Israelites over his heart before the Lord. Now, does that mean he's going to make decisions in there? Well, or is he just wearing the thing they make decisions with in front of the Lord? Remember, this is not superstition. This is the way we make decisions. God has given this to you, so don't treat it like it's a game. This is the Lord's way of speaking to you. And they did this a couple of times. Can you think of a time when they actually used this stuff to figure something out?
One of their battles now.
Yeah, there were times in battle. There was a time also where a guy had stolen a gold wedge and I think a piece of clothing, and they narrowed it down by tribe and family and so forth, and they found the guy. Achan was his name. And he said, yeah, you got me, I sinned, and so forth. And so a couple times they did this. And then they chose also in the days of Joshua who got what land in the land of Canaan, the same way. So, or was it simply that to make a decision they wanted to have the full list? Let's not forget any tribes. I mean, is it possible in a big family to forget somebody? Is it possible in a small family to forget somebody? Do you know the story of Pastor Schmidt, my predecessor? He and his wife were taking a drive on vacation, and his wife was sitting in the back seat and sleeping in the back seat, and he stopped for gas, and he came back out, and he drove on, and 40 miles later, the cop pulled him over. We have news that your wife is back at some gas station back there, and he drove away without his bride. Like, oh, oops. So, when my kids were little, we would get in the car, and I would count. Everybody here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Are we all? Is every seat occupied? Yes, Daddy. Let's go. That kind of thing. All right. Make the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth. This is for Aaron's high priestly robe. With an opening for the head in its center, there shall be a woven edge like a collar around this opening so that it will not tear. Logical?
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Not necessarily a collar, but some kind of a reinforced opening. Do you know what the opening and closing is on our pastor's gowns? Our present gowns have zippers that are half zips. They go from the collar down to the belly button. And when some of us are putting them on, they step into them and pull them up. I don't. I put mine on like it's a sweater or a sweatshirt over the head and drop it down, and it just falls in place, right? And then my brothers look at me like, how'd you do that so fast? But I'm just saying. no more. And then you zip it up and so forth. Make pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn around the hem of the robe with gold bells between them. So little puffy. We would probably do this with crochet or something. They didn't have that. But they had little balls of fabric with, stitch them together, and they made little pomegranate balls and did that. Do you know when crochet began? Napoleonic War, 1812, right in there. Crocheting was kind of brand new in that time period. It's so late that there's no English word for it. Crochet is French, and that's the word. It's that late. So there's some trivia you didn't think you'd learn tonight. The gold bells and the pomegranates are to alternate around the hem of the robe. Aaron must wear it when he ministers. The sound of the bells will be heard when he enters the holy place before the Lord and when he comes out, so that he will not die. So before he goes into the Holy of Holies, and as he's leaving, he'll move and this will ring a bell, and it'll be a reminder from God, for God and for the angels that are in there. This man is supposed to be in here. He has the little bells. But if somebody were to enter without the bells, are they supposed to be in there? And Ron, that's what happened to Nadab and Abihu. They offered unauthorized fire, probably in the Holy of Holies. This is in Leviticus, forgive me, it's either 10 or 11, I forget. But it's in that part of Leviticus, where on their ordination day, they go in and they think they get to do whatever they want to now. And is that what God said? No, that's not what God said. In fact, look at all the detail. Right, Kevin? Like, there's so much detail. How can you get this wrong? But we still get it wrong sometimes. So. Oh, I used to have a quote from this verse on the desk 2 secretaries ago, when Joanne Wolf was our secretary. She wanted me to find a Bible passage to have by the little handbell for ding, for when people came in. And so I said, the sound of bells will be heard when he enters. That was on a little card I had made. She was stunned that I found a passage for that had ring the bell from the Bible. But there it is. There it is. Make a plate of pure gold and engrave on it as a seal, holy to the Lord, Kodesh Ladonai. Would you like to say Kodesh Ladonai with me? Here you go, Brownie. Here's Kodesh Ladonai, right? Ladon. Well, the la is one of the three main Hebrew prepositions. You have ba, ka, and la. Ba, if it were Badonai, it would be in the Lord. Ka would be like or according to the Lord. And la, Ladonai, is to the Lord. There are your three prepositions. Write it down. No, I'm just kidding. Naoko was thinking of studying Hebrew, and I thought I would just give her a little. But only 3 prepositions. That's pretty good, isn't it?
That is.
And an and in front of everything. So there you go. And this and that and. By the way, here again, my Hebrew letters are not the Phoenician letters that they would have used. I used my Hebrew font that I have in my computer, so something different. Fasten a blue cord to it and attach it to the turban. It's to be on the front of the turban. It will be on Aaron's forehead, and he will bear the guilt involved in the sacred gifts the Israelites consecrate, whatever their gifts may be. Or, whate'er the gifts may be, right? It will be on Aaron's forehead continually so that they, that is the gifts, will be acceptable to the Lord. So when he goes to the Lord, holy to the Lord is the message for this offering. And he has the names of the tribes like epaulets or rank insignia on, or more like a flag insignia on his shoulders. This is for these people, the people of the Lord, as he makes a sacrifice. Whether it's the sacrifice on the Day of Atonement or simply the morning and evening sacrifice that he, Aaron, was responsible for every morning, every evening, right? How does the song go in Fiddler? Sunrise, sunset, yeah. My number 3 son, Peter, left for the seminary Sunday, and his younger brother, who just broke his ankle, is worried about being in the musical this year, and they're doing Fiddler on the Roof. And I told him, hey, Fiddler is on Tubi. It's one of the free channels on the internet right now. And Eric said, would you record it for me, Dad? So on the day I said goodbye to one son, I had, and because the internet in my house is spotty, you have to watch a movie while you're recording it, so it doesn't lock up or anything. So I had to watch all 3.5 hours of Fiddler on the Roof, which is such a tear-jerking movie because the guy loses his 3 daughters and his village. And I'm like crying for all this. It was a very emotional night for me. Very cathartic. I went through a whole bag of cookies. It was really man. 2 servings of ice cream. It was like, I can't. Weave the tunic of fine linen and make the turban of fine linen. Its sash is to be the work of an embroiderer. Make the tunics, sashes, headbands. Headbands, right? Like we wore in basketball and stuff like that. Why? For the ordinary priest? Because they're going to sweat up in front of the, like I said, if it's that hot in our sanctuary, what was it like in front of the altar? The bronze altar that's constantly burning. And they didn't, we don't have air conditioning, but they really didn't have air conditioning in the desert. To give them what? Dignity and honor. After you put these clothes on your brother Aaron and his sons, anoint and ordain them, consecrate them so that they may serve as priests. Make linen undergarments as a covering for the body, reaching from the waist to the thigh. Why did they have to have special underwear? Well, he didn't want them to wear nothing, and he wanted them to have something that would be, part of the uniform, so make this too. Make sure they have everything they need. And then there wouldn't be a question. Well, should I wear underwear? Should I not? Should I wear my ordinary? Well, no, you wear the consecrated underwear. Who takes this to an extreme today? Verse 42. Who has holy underwear? The Mormons. Yeah, the Mormons. Actually have holy underwear. Aaron and his sons must wear them whenever they enter the tent of meeting or approach the altar to minister in the holy place, so that they will not incur guilt and die. This is to be a lasting ordinance for Aaron and his descendants. Now, I'm going to talk for a second about symbolism that we see in the modern pastor's robe. So, a little bit of history. When did our pastors stop wearing white robes? And for a short while in history, Lutheran pastors wore black gowns. Do you know when that happened? Mark?
They always wore black when I was a kid.
About 1970 something.
When they stopped wearing white, you mean, and went to black? No. When black from black to white. But I'm talking about before that. When did the black gown get introduced to Lutheran worship? Because Luther never wore black to preach. He would have only worn white, which was the color that every minister, every priest had worn since Roman times, since New Testament times, had worn white. When did it become black? Well, it became black when, before then, but you got the name right. It's 1600s. So when the first Lutheran ministers came to America in the 1600s, so 100 years after Luther's time, Lutherans began to come over from especially Denmark and Norway and Germany and Sweden to an extent. They began to come over. The first Lutheran church service in America is around 1640. in there somewhere. That's kind of a round date. And that was held across the St. Lawrence in Canada. So, but in that area where there were guys coming in. And the St. Lawrence Seaway was the easy access into the Americas at that time. I don't think that New Amsterdam was built yet, New York City or anything like that. Certainly there was no Statue of Liberty for 200 years or 100 years after that. Anyway, so he came in there, and after they were here for a while, they would get in new ministers and so forth. And after a while, it became a question of where do we buy new gowns over here? And there were basically, at that time, 3 denominations. You had Catholic, Lutheran, and Reformed. And the Reformed were kind of a combination in those days of Anglican from England and Methodists. That was kind of it. And in the Reformed churches, the Anglicans, the Methodists, and so forth, they were affected by Calvinist doctrine, which had rejected all things Catholic. So everything that reminded people of Catholicism went out the window. They even changed the numbering of the 10 Commandments, the color of the preaching gown, everything. And so they went to what they had been using in Switzerland for academic teaching. The professors would wear a black gown to teach classes. And Luther probably did that too. But in Geneva, Switzerland, the preachers began to wear the black gown in the pulpit. It was probably shocking and horrifying to people when that started. That's not part of our culture, so we don't really know much about it in the Lutheran Church, but it happened. And so our people had the choice. Are you going to buy from a Catholic, or are you going to buy from a Reformed guy to get your new gowns? And a lot of our people began to buy into the idea because a new thing came into the Lutheran Church in the 1700s, pietism. And we began having more in common with Reformed churches than with the Catholic Church that we were originally a reform of. And so black gowns came into use. And from about 1750 to 1970, so whatever that is, 200 and a couple years, right? Black gowns were the standard in Lutheran churches. But there was a resurgence of a historical look at the symbolism of everything to do with worship in the Lutheran Church, in the Missouri Synod, Wisconsin Synod, in the old ULCA, the ULCA, the Hauge Synod, a lot of the old Lutheran churches, and they came up with, white was there for a reason. And so our pastors' gowns are actually descended, though, not from Aaron and Nadab and Abihu's gowns, but from the Roman toga, which is what the earliest Christian pastors were wearing, ordinary outfits, ordinary clothes, left over in Roman times in the early Christian church. And it's simply that when they moved out of that area into other parts of Europe, the clergy kept the gown even after it was out of fashion in Rome. And so it became now what we have today. You may think of a toga as being quite short. Well, you can see that on Confirmation Day, because our kids often have quite a short gown on Confirmation Day. That depends on if they lie when they tell us how tall they are, because the gown is always based on how tall you are, and the gown, they all have to go to the collar, but then they only go down so far. So in theory, they should go down to the ankle, but sometimes they just go to the knee. So whatever. So white gowns. Then he's wearing a stole. It's an emblem. A Missouri Synod pastor would tell you that it's a burden, like a millstone around the neck. I disagree with that completely. In fact, couldn't disagree more. But it is heavy, and it is like an extra layer of clothing. It does make you sweat a lot more than just the light gown would be. But it's colored. And what are the colors of our stoles, and what's the meaning? In the church year begins right after Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving weekend is not in the church year. The Sunday before Thanksgiving is the last Sunday of end times. The Sunday after Thanksgiving is the first Sunday of Advent. So our Thanksgiving, Lincoln may have done this on purpose when Lincoln introduced the date for Thanksgiving. But it's outside the church here. So that's just a curiosity, that fourth Sunday in November. But Advent is our first season. What color do we use usually in Advent? It's blue, unless you don't have blue, and then people use purple. But blue is the color of the sky. In Advent, we're looking for the coming of Christ, including the second coming, so there's a sky issue. Then at Christmas time, we switch over to white. In Epiphany, for part of Epiphany, we're white, and then we switch over to green, because there are miracles of Christ and there are earthly things in the Epiphany season. Then, after Epiphany is over, we have Transfiguration. We go to white again. In fact, that's often called White Sunday, Whit Sunday. And then that's followed by Lent. And our color for Lent, purple, for mourning, not so much for royalty, but for the purpose of mourning. Easter technically would be gold. Pastor Sutton, who was my former associate who's retired now, he's the only pastor I've ever met who actually owned a gold stole. He had one. But we only had one, and it was his, and so we never usually wore it. So we just wear white. Then the Easter season, we continue in white. After Easter comes Pentecost, which is red. It's the color of the Holy Spirit. Then we move into the summer season of the Sundays after Pentecost. Oh, Trinity Sunday is white for God. And then Pentecost season is what color? That's green. So green gets used in two seasons, and one of them is summer. So our green stuff has triple the use of anything else, which is why it gets ratty the quickest. So it's hard to keep that stuff. And then after that, we have a short season we used to called End Times. Our new hymnal is downplaying end times. So I don't know if we're really keeping it or not. Kind of free to do it or not to do it if you want to, and so forth. Why else does a pastor wear a robe?
So
To block out his personality, maybe something.
you're distracted by what he's wearing.
By that. Yeah. So, his bizarre choice in ties. If I were wearing the tie on the left, would you hear any of the sermon at all? Or what if it were just a political color? What if the minister in say November is wearing a red or a blue tie, solid color tie, and you're not a blue or a red person? Would you be angry with pastor? It happens. Boy, you wear the wrong color in the wrong month and people get mad at you. So we leave politics out of the pulpit. We are having a Bible class this October called Politics is Driving Me Crazy. I'm thinking about wearing a shirt and tie and wearing two ties, something like that. It is true that our congregation, even more than many Wells congregations, is divided almost exactly 50-50. You may not think that. You might think everybody votes the way you do, but the truth is it's just about exactly half and half at St. Paul's. Or the guy in the middle with his shirt halfway untucked. By the way, with a skinny guy, it's a choice. With a guy my size, it's just an accident of walking. The shirt becomes untucked. Or the guy with his tie not quite tied right. So the gown takes all that away. Yeah.
I must have missed it. What color was the end times?
End times is red, if we have it. The hymnal we just stopped using, the 1991 hymnal, created the season of end times. Most people had never had an end times season before 1991. And then we had it for these 25, 30 years. And now the new blue hymnal is downplaying end times, doesn't really include it. So we kind of made it up. Are we getting rid of it now? I don't know. But it was most of my ministry and and back to my college days. So I don't know. I'm kind of used to it. But Mark?
What about the belt or belting around the roof?
The what?
The belt.
Oh, the cincture? Yeah. That's a style that's worn with certain kinds of gowns. And there are other, you can wear, it's called the chasuble. Pastor Beauvais wears one at St. John's. He's got the little rope belt. You can also have a little semi-poncho thing. It's called what is that thing called? It's a no, it's just worn over the head. But so cincture, chasuble, and I forget the name of it. But even clergy, gowns change style over the years and so forth. We're way past time, but go ahead.
When did hats go out of style?
Hats?
Yeah. Because in the Middle Ages, they often wore.
Yeah, but they took them off in worship. They took them off when they came into church. And that's still the practice is most men will take off their hats when they come into worship. I keep our ushers from scolding men or boys who don't take their hats off. Because we have a couple guys who come in with hats to worship. And some of our ushers get upset about that. And I say, there's no passage about that. And wouldn't you rather have them in church than have them not in church? So let's go easy on the taking the hat. This is not worship. This is just a Bible class. But anyhow.
One practical reason maybe for that is just because the people behind you
Can't see. It's essentially a sign of respect. Although in Scripture, the hat is a sign that you have authority over you. So I'm wearing a hat. That means that there is something over me. That's the sign of authority. So, and what is, according to 1 Corinthians in their culture, that's just in Corinthian culture, what was the woman's sign of authority? Her long hair. That was her sign. Do our women have to wear long hair? Faith, do you have to have long hair? No. You don't. We'll go in next time to the golden calf, but God bless you all. May the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with you all. Thanks for letting me do this. See you next Tuesday.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Invisible Church, the Bible study podcast from St. Paul's Lutheran Church, New Ulm, Minnesota.